The Kythera had conquered 17 star systems before they even learned the meaning of fear. Their homeworld of Vexthaner was a paradise by galactic standards: gentle gravity, stable climate, abundant resources, and predators so docile they were kept as pets. When they first ventured into space, they discovered that the universe was filled with what the Galactic Council termed Deathworlders, species that had evolved on planets so hostile that their mere survival had forged them into living weapons. Commander Zephyr stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dominion, her chitinous exoskeleton gleaming under the soft bioluminescent panels. Through the viewport, she watched another world burn. The hegemony of Kythera had just claimed their 18th conquest, and the defeated Gorvani were being processed for relocation to labor colonies. The Gorvani had been impressive fighters, their homeworld's crushing gravity and acidic atmosphere had made them incredibly resilient. But like all the others, they had eventually fallen to Kythera technological superiority and tactical brilliance. Fleet Admiral, her communications officer chirped, "We're receiving a priority transmission from the Homeworld Council." Zephyr's four eyes focused on the holographic display as High Counselor Vex Mana appeared, her ceremonial wing membranes fluttering with excitement. "Commander, we have identified a new target. The planet designation is unusual. The inhabitants call it Earth, and they appear to be a primitive species that has only recently achieved basic space travel. However, our xenobiological analysis suggests they may be among the most extreme Deathworlders we have yet encountered." Zephyr's mandibles clicked with amusement. "More extreme than the Gorvani? Or the crystal borers of Phanex Prime? Far more extreme. Their planet is a Class 12 Deathworld, the highest classification we have on record. Violent weather patterns, massive gravitational fields, a corrosive atmosphere that somehow supports combustion, tectonic instability, and radiation bombardment from their star that would be lethal to most species. The planet is covered in what they call water, a universal solvent so aggressive it can dissolve metal. They actually consume this substance regularly." The bridge fell silent. Even the Kythera, who had faced down the galaxy's fiercest warriors, felt a chill at the description. "Yet they survived and thrived there?" Zephyr asked. "Not just survived, they became the apex predators of their entire biosphere. Our preliminary scans suggest they routinely engage in activities that would be considered suicidal on any civilized world. They deliberately expose themselves to their star's radiation for recreational purposes. They consume toxins as a social activity. They have somehow weaponized nearly every element on their planet, including the water itself." Zephyr considered this. The Kythera had built their empire by recognizing that Deathworlders, while individually formidable, were typically limited by their primitive technology and scattered populations. The key was always to strike swiftly with overwhelming force before they could organize. "What is their technological level?" "Primitive but concerning. They have nuclear weapons, crude but effective spacecraft, and something our analysts are calling improvised engineering. They appear to build functional technology from whatever materials are available, often with no regard for safety protocols." 3 weeks later, the Kythera fleet arrived in the Sol system. Initial reconnaissance confirmed the High Counselor's assessment: Earth was indeed a hellscape that somehow teemed with life. The third planet from the star was a swirling mass of violent storms, vast oceans of the corrosive water substance, and landmasses that shifted and moved due to internal geological forces. "How," whispered Zephyr's science officer, "does anything survive down there?" They were about to find out. The first sign that something was wrong came when their scout ships began disappearing. Not destroyed, simply vanishing from sensors entirely. Then came the transmissions, broadcasted on primitive radio frequencies in hundreds of different languages, all saying variations of the same thing: "Welcome to Earth. Please state your intentions." Zephyr decided on the standard approach. She transmitted the Kythera's formal surrender demand, expecting the usual response: either immediate capitulation or desperate, doomed resistance. Instead, she received a reply that would be remembered in Kythera military academies for generations: "Thanks, but we're good. Also, we've reverse-engineered your cloaking technology from the scout ships. Impressive work, but we've got some improvements to suggest." The impossible happened over the next 6 hours. The humans, as they called themselves, systematically dismantled the most advanced fleet in known space using a combination of primitive kinetic weapons, creative use of their own hostile environment, and what could only be described as weaponized insanity. They turned asteroids into railgun projectiles. They somehow convinced the Kythera's own automated systems to malfunction by broadcasting something they called computer viruses. Most shocking of all, they launched themselves into space in what appeared to be barely controlled explosions, wearing primitive environmental suits, to personally board Kythera vessels and disable them from within. Zephyr watched in horror as a single individual, somehow survived in the vacuum of space long enough to manually override her flagship's shield generators. Through the security feed, she could see the being's face through its transparent helmet. It was smiling. "Commander," her tactical officer reported, voice shaking, "we've lost 60% of the fleet. The humans they're not trying to destroy us. They're capturing our ships intact." "How is that possible? They keep saying something about reverse engineering and warranty issues." The final transmission came from a human who identified himself as Admiral Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force. He appeared on screen, a bipedal creature with soft-looking skin and what seemed to be decorative fur on its head. He was consuming what appeared to be a mild stimulant while radiation from his star streamed through the viewport behind him. "Commander Zephyr, I presume? We've been monitoring your communications. Here's the situation: your fleet is now mostly under our control, your technology is being integrated into our defense systems, and our xenobiologists are absolutely fascinated by your species' evolution. We'd like to offer you a choice." Zephyr could barely speak. What kind of choice?" "You can either retreat to your space and spread the word that Earth is under human protection, or you can stay and help us figure out how to make your weapons even more effective. We've got some ideas about combining your energy weapons with our kinetic systems that we think you'll find interesting." The human paused to consume more of the stimulant, apparently oblivious to the cosmic radiation washing over him. "Oh, and one more thing. We've been in contact with some of the species you've conquered. The Gorvani, the Thanex crystal borers, a few others. They're very interested in joining what we're calling the Deathworlder Liberation Front. Turns out, once you give Deathworlders proper technology and organization, they're remarkably motivated." 3 months later, the hegemony of Kythera formally dissolved. The Galactic Council established new protocols for contact with extreme Deathworlds. And somewhere in the Sol system, humans continued to do impossible things in impossible conditions, apparently for the simple reason that they found it entertaining. Zephyr, now serving as a cultural liaison in the newly formed Terran Deathworlder Alliance, often reflected on the irony. The Kythera had conquered the galaxy by exploiting the strength that came from surviving hostile worlds. They had never considered what might happen if they encountered a species that had not merely survived their death world, but had learned to call it home. The humans had a phrase for it: "Hold my beer and watch this." The galaxy was still learning what that meant.